Do you know that the Social Security Survivor Benefit is one of the least understood benefits offered by Social Security, even by people who receive the Survivor Benefit? There are a lot of reasons for this, but the biggest one is that there are some exceptions built into the Survivor Benefit that make it just a little bit better than the rules with standard Social Security. The strange thing is, if you master a few key ideas, the exceptions will be very easy to understand, and that's where we're going to go in this video. I'm going to break down the Social Security Survivor Benefit into easy to understand pieces, and along the way I'm going to provide charts and a few examples so that you really understand the information that's being presented to you. All right, let's go. There are two types of payments that are due to the survivor: a lump sum payment of $255 and the transfer of the deceased's Social Security payment to a spouse, a dependent, and maybe even an ex-spouse in some circumstances. And we're going to cover all of those, but let's start off with the $255. First, the lump sum payment of $255 hasn't changed since 1954. It hasn't been indexed into today's dollars like a lot of Social Security payments, so it's just a flat check effectively for $255. That's about $3,000 in today's dollars if it had been indexed along the way. The purpose, many people think, was really to provide for funeral expenses, although candidly, it doesn't come before the funeral, it never did. So all you could do with that check back in the day anyway is repay the loan that you had to take out to pay for a funeral if you didn't have the funds on hand. The payment goes to a surviving spouse, and if there's no surviving spouse, then the payment goes to dependent children. It does not go to adult children or other family members if there is no surviving spouse or dependent children. There isn't really much more to say about this, and probably not the reason that you came to this video, so let's talk about the other payment, and that is how the survivor can assume the deceased's Social Security benefit and coordinate that benefit with their own Social Security payment. First, let's talk about the length of marriage rules. The survivor needs to have been married to the deceased for at least 9 months and can claim the survivor benefit as early as age 60, and actually it's 50 if the survivor is disabled. This benefit's also available to the divorced spouse if they were married for at least 10 years and they haven't remarried or remarried after age 60. Finally, this benefit's available to dependents if they meet the requirements for dependents, and we'll talk about those requirements in just a few minutes. Let's talk about how the survivor benefit is calculated and how that benefit is applied in two different scenarios. Scenario number one is if the Social Security recipient, the one who's deceased, never claimed Social Security benefits, and the second is if they did in fact claim Social Security benefits. In situation number one, if the deceased passed away before filing for Social Security, they either passed away before full retirement age or after full retirement age. I suppose conceivably they could have passed away on their birthday, reaching full retirement age, but let's assume it's one or the other because most likely it's one or the other. What is full retirement age? That's the age where the deceased would have received 100% of their Social Security payment, their primary insurance amount as it's often called. Full retirement age is somewhere between age 66 and 67, depending on the year that they were born. If they were born in 1954 or earlier, their full retirement age is age 66. If they were born in 1960 or later, their full retirement age is age 67. For the time in between, for every year past 1954, you add 2 months to the full retirement age. So if someone was born in 1955, their full retirement age would be 66 years and 2 months. If they were born in 1956, it would be 66 years and 4 months, and so forth and so on, all the way up to 1960, where it would be age 67. By the way, don't worry about remembering this. I'll put a schedule in the description so that you don't have to stop the video to write this down. But for the purposes of this video, let's assume that full retirement age is age 67. So at full retirement age 67, they'd receive 100% of their Social Security payment. Now, for the examples we're going to use in this video, we're going to use $3,000 as the size of their Social Security payment. Why? Because it's very easy to use under different scenarios. This may or may not be even close to what you would receive. Your payment could be higher or lower. And the fact is, those that depart us don't plan their departure, and sometimes it's a result of something that takes them well inside of the years where they can claim Social Security. Let's assume 58, for example. In this instance, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to file for Social Security because the earliest you can file for Social Security as a primary insured is age 62 in most cases. So what happens if they pass away before they reach full retirement age, or even before they reach the age to claim Social Security? Well, the SSA will assume, for the purposes of the survivor benefit, that they did in fact reach full retirement age 67. And as you'll see in a moment, the survivor can claim the Social Security survivor benefit as early as age 60, even 50 if they're disabled. But I will say, if the survivor claims it before they themselves reach full retirement age, there is a haircut on the amount that they would be due. So in this instance, you have a $3,000 payment. That's the unadjusted amount. And we'll talk about what happens to that payment if the recipient claims it at different ages. Now, what happens if the deceased did not claim Social Security and they were actually older than full retirement age? Well, the SSA adds 2/3 of 1% for every month beyond full retirement age to the primary insurance payment, and so the survivor will get the benefit of that. So if, for example, they passed away at 67.5, instead of 100% of the primary insurance amount of the $3,000, they'd receive 104% of that amount. If they were 68, it would be 108% of the amount. If they were 69, it'd be 116%. And if they were 70 and still had not filed for Social Security, it'd be 124% of the $3,000. So let's assume for this example that they were 67.5 when they passed. So the monthly payment would go from $3,000 a month to $3,120 a month, because that's 104% of $3,000. Now, what happens if the deceased actually filed for Social Security? Well, if they filed for Social Security at or beyond full retirement age, that would be the unadjusted amount that is given to the survivor. In this case, let's assume again that they were 67.5. The survivor's unadjusted amount, before adjusting for the age of the survivor, is $3,120. And taking in this example all the way through, if the deceased had waited until age 70 before filing for Social Security, the unadjusted amount would be $3,720. Now, what happens if they take it early? Let's assume that they took it at age 62. That means that their payment is $2,100 instead of $3,000. That's 70% of the payment at full retirement age. Does this mean that the surviving spouse only gets 70% of the full retirement age payment? Well, fortunately not. That's not what it means. There's something called a widow's limit, which adjusts the payment up to 82.5%. So even if the deceased was receiving 70% of the $3,000, 70% of their primary insurance amount, the survivor can get up to 82.5% depending on their age. The widow's limit gives the survivor the higher of 82.5% of the primary insurance amount, or the actual amount, both adjusted for the age that the widow, the survivor, claims. Phew, now that I got all that out of the way, let's talk about the adjustments for the age of the survivor and other special situations. First, the age of the survivor. This is the age adjustment schedule. Now, there's something you should notice here. Under normal circumstances, the full retirement age of a spouse is the exact same methodology as the full retirement age of the primary insured. In other words, if the spouse was born in 1960, their full retirement age would be age 67, and they would be entitled to 100% of their payment. However, because of the way that the survivor benefit is structured, all of the ages are 4 months less. What this means is full retirement age for the survivor benefit for someone born in 1960 isn't 67, it's 66 and 8 months. The reason I'm telling you this is because all of the published schedules don't make that distinction. And actually what you're looking at now is really just from a published schedule, but it is in fact a number that you should take 4 months off of. It's important to note that the surviving spouse can't get more than 100% of the deceased's payment, with one notable exception, and that's the widow's limit. Now, with the widow's limit, you just have to smile and say okay, because frankly the lines get a little bit blurred here. Let's talk about the widow's limit. If the spouse is age 60, 50 if they're disabled, their age-based reduction is 71.5%. Age 61 at 75.6%, age 62 at 79.6%, and age 63 83.7%. At age 62 and 9 months, they hit exactly 82.5%. Because the widow's limit is set at 82.5% of the primary insurance amount, and at age 62 and 9 months they hit 82% of the primary insurance amount, They don't get another penny by waiting past age 62 and 9 months. So let me give you an example really to drive this home. This one actually is something that people have a hard time getting their mind around. Let's assume that you have two couples, John and Jane Jones and Sam and Stella Smith. Now let's assume that John and Sam are friends. John claimed Social Security at age 62 and Sam claimed Social Security at age 67. They both have a primary insurance amount of $3,000. That means that John receives $2,100, that's 70% of $3,000, and Sam receives $3,000 because that's 100% of $3,000. Now let's assume that John and Sam go on an African safari and disappear forever, never to be found again. John's wife Jane is age 62 and 9 months, and Sam's wife Stella is also age 62 and 9 months. Which one gets the higher Social Security payment? Well, if you look at the widow's limit, Jane gets 82.5% of the primary insurance amount. Stella gets 82.5% of Sam's payment. Sam's payment is $3,000. Let's assume that Jane and Stella go to the Social Security office and both file for the survivor benefits at the same time, both 62 and 9 months. Stella goes up to the desk and they do her calculation and they say, right, you get 82.5% of Sam's payment. His payment was $3,000, so you receive $2,475. Stella feels that the math is right. She says thank you. She walks away, and Jane walks up to the counter and hands the person her paperwork. The person behind the counter says, yes, you're also 62 and 9 months, and your husband, John, was receiving $2,100, but you too get 82.5% of the primary insurance amount because you did wait until age 62 and 9 months, so your payment is $2,475. Jane smiles, says thank you. Stella looks at her kind of sideways, and they both walk out the door and go have lunch together. Now let's talk about other rules and opportunities. First, the survivor benefit is subject to the earnings limit. What that means is if, say, Jane or Stella decide that they want to go back to work, or if they're working and they're collecting the survivor benefit, they have earnings thresholds, and if they exceed those earnings thresholds, they have to give part of their survivor benefit back. It's important to note that the survivor benefit is subject to the same limits as the primary insurance amount, which means that if Jane is working and she earns in excess of $23,400 in any year, except for the year she reaches full retirement age, she has to give back $1 for every 2 earned in excess of this amount. If this is the year that she reaches full retirement age, but it's not her birthday yet, for any amount above $62,160, she has to give back $1 for every $3 above that amount. The SSA doesn't just keep this. Once she reaches full retirement age, they add that amount back to her payment, and they give her a higher survivor benefit payment. Now, a few of the other rules that are very important here. The survivor doesn't get both the survivor benefit and the spousal benefit. And so in every scenario, the survivor benefit is going to be higher. The reason is that the spousal benefit is based on the primary insurance amount of the deceased in this case, and can only be up to 50% of the PIA. And so the SSA adjusts the spousal benefit to the survivor benefit. The second is that the survivor can only take the survivor benefit or their own primary insurance amount. They can't take both, but they can collect the survivor benefit and let their own primary insurance amount grow, or vice versa. So it makes sense in a lot of cases to take the smaller amount. So if Jane is 62 3/4 and she's receiving $2,475 as a survivor benefit, and her own primary insurance amount is $3,000, at age 62 3/4, she'd be getting just over $2,100 on her own account. She could let that grow and continue to collect the survivor benefit, and then collect her own primary insurance amount later. Finally, let's talk about dependent benefits. What happens if the surviving spouse is caring for young children, the divorced ex-spouse's benefits, and also the family maximum. First, each dependent child is entitled to survivor benefits. If there's only one, that child is entitled to 82.5% of the primary insurance amount of the deceased. If there's more than one, 75% each of the primary insurance amount. Dependent children are those that are under age 18 or up to 19 years and 2 months if they're still in high school, or if the child is disabled before age 22, they can receive the dependent benefit at any age. Finally, if the surviving spouse is caring for a child under age 16 or a child with a disability under age 23, he or she can claim 75% of the primary insurance amount at any age. Finally, dependent parents, age 62 or older, who receive at least half of their support from the deceased, also qualify for dependent benefits. Now, what happens if the spouse remarries? Well, if the spouse is under 60, 50 if they're disabled, then the survivor benefit goes away. If they're 60 or older, then they keep the survivor benefit, but they can't take both the survivor benefit and the spousal benefit from their new partner. They have to choose one or the other. Finally, the divorced ex-spouse. The ex-spouse receives the same benefit amount as the surviving spouse if the ex-spouse has not remarried, or if they're age 60 or older when they do remarry. There's also a family maximum that applies. It's somewhere between 150 and 180%, but the divorced ex-spouse or spouses, in some circumstances, don't draw from that amount. So if Sam was married to Amy for 10 years, Brenda for 10 years, Colleen for 10 years, and none of them remarried, and then he married Stella and all waited until their own full retirement age, Sam's surviving wife and 3 ex-spouses could each collect $3,000, so a $12,000 total in survivor benefits. That's on top of the dependent benefits. If you like this video, check out that video, 8 ways you can lose your Social Security benefits instantly. This is Geoff Schmidt, and I will see you in that video right there.